Hello and welcome to pmclounge.com. Today we are discussing the manage project knowledge process. Now this process is part of integration management knowledge area. Of course, it was added as part of the PMBOK edition 6, the PMBOK edition 6. So we will be discussing all of it, everything that you need to know about this process in this one video. So it may go a bit longer, but hang around if you want to learn everything that there is to know about this new process. Now, if you're into reading articles, if you would rather read about this process rather than watch a video, then first link in the description is for you. It is going to take you to a relevant article on our official website pmclaunch.com. So first link in the description, very important. Also, we have discussed everything that you need to know about integration management knowledge area. So the second link will give you the entire playlist of every single topic of that knowledge area. Now, that being clear, that being said, let's get started. So this is a new process that was added as part of integration management knowledge area in PMBOK guide edition 6, something that we have already discussed. Now, it is part of the executing process group. So of the 5 process group, this process is part of the executing process group. So this is the PGKA mapping. As you can clearly see, we are talking about integration management knowledge area and executing process group. This is where the manage project knowledge process resides. This is where it has been added. Now, as you can also see, integration management is the only knowledge area that contains processes across all 5 process groups. This is the only knowledge area in the PMP courseware that does so. All right, let's talk about the process finally. So this process is all about using the existing knowledge and creating new knowledge to achieve the project's objectives. So you are making use of the knowledge that exists in the organization. You are also creating new knowledge, and all of this is going to help you achieve the project's objectives, thereby contributing to organizational learning as well. So when you're creating new knowledge, of course, you are contributing to the organizational learning process as well. So the key benefit of this process is that prior organizational knowledge is leveraged, since we talked about using existing knowledge. So prior organizational knowledge is leveraged to produce or even improve the project outcome. So when you're meeting the project objectives, when you're achieving them, you're trying to produce or even improve the outcomes of the project. It should also be noted that when new knowledge is created during the course of the project, it is made available for the future project. So whenever you're creating new knowledge, it becomes existing knowledge for the future project. So that's something important that you should note about this process. A quick reminder before we move ahead, pmclounge.com/pm101. This is 1.5 hour free training session, your gateway to the world of project management. Don't forget to check it out. All right, now let's look into the different types of knowledge. So there are basically 2 types of knowledge. One is explicit knowledge. This refers to something which can be readily codified. This is the knowledge which can be codified into words, pictures, numbers, so something that you can convey easily. Second type of knowledge is tacit knowledge, which cannot be easily conveyed, because this is something which is personal. This is something which is difficult to express. So the example for these kind of knowledge are beliefs, insights, experiences, and know-how. It's difficult to express these. They cannot be codified easily, if I were to use this word here. All right, let me give you an example. So let's say you have delivered a certain kind of projects for 5 times, right? So you have delivered a certain kind of project 5 times, and you know that in the end, during the course of your project, towards the end, you need the approval from, let's say, your organization's security department. Right now, if the security department takes 2 weeks, based on your experience, right, based on the 5 projects that you have delivered, the security department asks for 2 weeks to provide their approval. This is explicit knowledge. This is something which can be written down, jotted down, and if you are giving a knowledge transfer to a future project manager, a potential future project manager, you can simply tell them that security team requires 2 weeks to provide the approval. This is explicit knowledge. Second is tacit knowledge, which could come in from your experience of dealing with the security team, where you got to know that this team does not respond to emails frequently. They are very, very irregular. So this is tacit knowledge, because this is your experience. You cannot be 100% sure that they will provide you status updates. You are not 100% sure that they are going to respond to your emails, because that has been your experience of the past 5 projects. So this is tacit knowledge. It cannot be codified, but the requirement of 2 weeks is something which can be codified. So I hope it's clear. I hope the two kinds of knowledge are clear. So knowledge management deals with managing both explicit as well as tacit knowledge. So when you are performing the knowledge management, the managed project knowledge process, you are dealing with both types of knowledge. Now, this requires knowledge sharing and knowledge integration. The knowledge needs to be shared, something we spoke of in the example right now, right? And it also requires knowledge integration. What is knowledge integration? So it refers to integrating knowledge from different domains, contextual knowledge, and project management knowledge. So that is knowledge integration. All right, let's talk about some of the misconceptions around managing knowledge. Number one of the most common one actually, is that managing knowledge simply involves documenting everything so that it can be shared. Document everything and share it. Send a mass email and you have done your job. That is a misconception. That is not how you manage knowledge. Another misconception is that managing knowledge is simply obtaining lessons learned, a lessons learned document or a lessons learned register at the end of the project, which can be utilized in future projects. So managing knowledge, of course, having a lessons learned register is important. It is one of the most important output of this process itself, but this task in itself is not everything that there is that you should do when it comes to managing knowledge. And that is the misconception that we just dealt with. Now, some of the issues that you may face while sharing knowledge are, so let's talk about explicit knowledge first. So explicit knowledge, it can be shared via lessons learned document or the lessons learned register, because it can be easily codified, right? However, the entire context might be lost in the procedure, and such knowledge is open to different interpretations. We just talked about how the security team requires 2 weeks to provide an approval, right? Now that knowledge could be about just one kind of project. For different project that has a different outcome, that 2 weeks may not hold true, right? So the context of why the security team requires 2 weeks, that is lost when it comes to explicit knowledge. Now, although it can be easily shared, isn't always understood or applied in the right way, which is another problem, right? A different kind of project, and you give 2 weeks for the security team to provide their approval, they may come back and say we need 4 weeks for these kind of projects. So those are some of the issues in sharing knowledge when it comes to explicit knowledge. Now let's talk about tacit knowledge. So tacit knowledge, on the other hand, has the context built in, because it is someone who's telling you their story. So they are going to give you the entire story. So the context will already be there, but then it is difficult to codify. You cannot put them down in words. Now, tacit knowledge resides in the mind. This is something very, very important. Tacit knowledge resides in the mind and is normally shared only in conversations and interactions. So going back to our security approval example, as a project manager that the security team is very irregular when it comes to responding to emails. That is something which is residing in your mind. It will only come out in conversations and interactions. It cannot be codified, it cannot be quantified. You cannot say that out of every 10 emails you send, they will respond to 4 of them. You cannot say that. That's simply experience, which will only come out in conversations and interactions. So, what is the goal of manage project knowledge process? So, here's the goal: to ensure that skills, experience, and expertise of the entire project team and stakeholders is used before, during, and after the project. Very, very important definition. This is the goal of this new process which is added, to ensure that skills, experience, and expertise of the entire project team and stakeholders is used before, during, and even after the project. Before the project, when it is in its concept phase. During the project, of course, the entire execution phase, the entire requirements gathering, the all the phases, right? And even after the project, once you're done with the project, right, you're only providing services, let's say after sales services, or let's say production support, something of that sort. Even during that time, the skills, experience, and expertise is required. So that's the goal of the manage project knowledge process. Tacit knowledge resides in the minds of people, something we have already discussed, and thus an atmosphere of trust needs to be created so that people are motivated enough to share it. This is very, very important. We just talked about how the security team does not really respond to emails that regularly. Is that something you would be, comfortable enough in sharing when situation in environments and situation where you do not trust the other person? You are not going to do so, right? So that is why this kind of atmosphere is very, very important to be created. And equally important is that people pay attention to the knowledge being shared, or what's the use, right? If you're watching this video, you're not paying attention, what's the use, right? So do pay attention. Now, knowledge is shared using a combination of knowledge management and information management tools and techniques, something that we are going to discuss in this video. All right, now it's time to look into the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of this process. Now, typically, we don't cover the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of any processes. We only cover the important concepts from those inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs, and you will understand why we do so. But for this process, we are looking to cover everything so that everything that you need to know about this process is contained in this one video. All right, so let's look into the inputs. Project management plan, and that is the reason why we don't cover inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques for every other process, because this is something we have already covered in the past, right? So project management plan, if you're looking for more information on it, the second link in the description, which is the entire playlist of integration management knowledge area, you'll find all the videos related to project management plan in that playlist. Project documents like lessons learned, resource breakdown structure, stakeholder register, etc. So these are some of the project documents which are important inputs to this process. Deliverables. Now, a deliverable is basically any unique verifiable product or result. It can be a product or it can be a result that is produced as part of the project. It is a deliverable. Typically, deliverables are tangible components. So typically they are tangible components of the project, right? So this is a concept. Deliverable is something that you will hear too often from project managers. So it's good to know what deliverable actually is. EEF, OPA, something that we have already discussed in the past, available in the playlist, second link in the description, so do check that out. Now, so these are the 5 inputs of the manage project knowledge process. So let's talk about the tools and techniques of this process. The first one is knowledge management. What is this? So knowledge management is all about connecting people so that they can work together to create new knowledge, share tacit knowledge, and integrate the knowledge of diverse team members. So these are the 3 points expected when you are connecting people as part of the knowledge management tool. Some of the tools and techniques that come under this category are knowledge sharing events, networking events, online social networking platforms, forums, meetings, workshops, etc. So these are basically some of the tools that you can use to achieve knowledge management technique. Information management. So that's second tool and technique of this process. So while knowledge management is about connecting people, this is something that we discussed. Information management deals with connecting people with information. So they aid in sharing explicit knowledge. So knowledge management was all about tacit knowledge. Information management is all about sharing of explicit knowledge. So some of the tools and techniques for this category are lessons learned register, published articles, PMIS or project management information system, etc. So these are some of the tools and techniques that can be used to achieve the technique of information management. Interpersonal and team skills. So active listening, very important tool under this category of interpersonal and team skills. So it improves communication for sure. The other person wants to make sure that you are actively listening what he or she is speaking. And knowledge sharing, it also reduces misunderstandings, that's for sure. So facilitation, leading the project team to a successful decision or conclusion, that is also one of the subcategory of interpersonal and team skills that you need to have, that you need to apply as part of this process. Leadership helps communicating the vision and inspire the project team to focus on appropriate knowledge and its objectives. So all about leadership, right? Now, networking, it helps build informal connections and relations amongst the project stakeholders, helping create an environment to share tacit and explicit knowledge. Remember, we talked about this earlier as well. Sharing of tacit knowledge requires an environment of trust, and networking is the tool that is going to help you do so. Finally, political awareness, and this is not about a country's politics or a world view of the politics, right? We are not talking about world politics here. We are talking about organizational political environment that should be known in order to plan project communication. So someone who has a lot of power, who has a lot of influence, right? They may not have the correct job role as of now, but their influence could be huge. You are supposed to speak to them differently, and they could be an engineer, right? So you're supposed to speak to them differently as compared to some other engineer, right? So how do you deal with people with different types of influences, right? So this is important. This is beyond job role, right? And this is all about political awareness. Expert judgment, I don't have to say anything. Actually, we have covered expert judgment in a whole video previously. So you already know what expert judgment is. If you don't know, then basically you call upon experts or subject matter experts and you take their suggestions as part of this tool. Lessons learned register, and we are now talking about output. So the major output of this process is the lessons learned register. So lessons learned register, it is used as an input and updated as an output in many processes throughout the project. This is something that you will definitely realize through the course of your project management study. Now, lessons learned is basically used to document the knowledge. This can be achieved by videos, pictures, audios, or any other suitable means. So you are basically documenting knowledge when you are generating this output of lessons learned. Typically, the lessons learned register will include category and description of the situation as well as the associated impact, recommendations, and proposed actions. So we are trying to include as much metadata for lessons learned as possible so that the context is not lost. All right, so three questions before we say goodbye and end this video. Question number one, when do you perform manage project knowledge process? Right? Let me know in the comments. When do you think, now you know everything that there is to know about this process, when do you think you are going to perform this process? If you don't know the answer, head over to the first link in the description, our related article on this process. You'll find the answer to this question there. Now, question number two, are processes in PGK mapping arranged chronologically? Related to question one itself, right? We talked about when do you perform this process. Now, do you think the processes, all the processes listed in the PGK mapping, are they arranged chronologically? Really? Let me know in the comments. And finally, is lessons learned an OPA or EEF? What do you think is a lessons learned register? An organizational process asset or an enterprise environmental factor? Let me know the answers in the comments. So that is all that we had in this video. Hope you got value out of it. Hope you don't have to go anywhere else when it comes to this process and you were able to understand it. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified whenever we upload new videos. Also, don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP resource. Thank you.